What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today is probably the last time I'm gonna shamelessly plug my fantasy novel that I'm writing. And so I wanted to sort of finish off with like the final part of the world building. I've done a couple of videos where I've talked about how I came up with the idea and what the plot's going to be. I done one where I addressed the sorts of people and creatures that will exist in this world, and for the most part it's based on Irish mythology. So I wanted to sort of talk about our major plot devices, and do a little bit of world building, just like general world building. So we're going to start with the 4 treasures of the Tirnadia, which are, and I will, as we go through them, I will show, like sort of tell you how they fit in with the 4 suits of the tarot cards. So, our first one, we're starting with the stone, aren't we? So our first one is known as the Stone of Fal. It comes from the city of Falius, and its properties, as described on Wikipedia, is it would cry out beneath the king who took the sovereignty of Ireland. It was supposedly located near the Hill of Tara in County Meath, which is a location I would love to go and visit. I want to go to the Hill of Tara, because there is actually a standing stone at the Hill of Tara, and if I'm not mistaken, it does have a big old star on it as well. I'm sort of combining this with the idea of the Rosetta Stone, which obviously is another very important stone in archaeology, where it had, I think it was Latin, Greek, and some other language, I think Hebrew or Arabic or something like that on there, and using that we were able to translate ancient texts. I'm using it like that, but giving a much more high fantasy magical vibe, in that being in possession of the stone will allow you to speak Draconic, so you'll be able to communicate with the Dragon King himself. And being a whole series is supposed to be this idea of the current High King, who rules over the Court of Lords, which essentially is just like my world's version, like it's just my high fantasy version of the UN, and the High King is essentially just like the president thereof. He's basically waged a war with dragons, and if he hasn't slaughtered them, he's at least sent them into hiding. And obviously by being in hiding, allowing the humans and other races an opportunity to build up weapons against them, meaning that the longer they stay hiding, the more dangerous it is for them to come out and do things like hunt, with the idea being that if they don't come out and die by the sword, they will just die of starvation. And so the overall arc will be trying to reinsert the Dragon King upon his own throne and bring him back to his full power, because being such a central part of any high fantasy world's environment, and the whole like ecology of it all, you know, certain things are starting to go a little bit awry without dragons in the world. And so a very important one, and it's why they start off with it. It's so that they'll actually be able to communicate with the Dragon King as they continue on with the other parts of their journey. Our second one is what was the second one? Is the sword. So this one is the Sword of Light, also known as Cleve Solace, and it belongs to the god Nuada, who you may have heard of if you watched Hellboy Golden Army, because the villain of that is essentially this guy. They paint him more as a fairy, which the Tuatha Dé Danann in later times were regarded as. They were just regarded as a particularly powerful clan of fairies, and therefore were revered as equal to what we would consider gods to be. But no, it is from the Sword of Light that Nuada was able to defeat Balor, the king of the Fomorians. So it says here, no one ever escaped from it once it was drawn from its sheath, and no one could resist it. The sword is also described as, in the Tain legend, as Nuada's Canal, a glowing bright torch. And it is found in or it comes from the city of Findius. Our next one after that is the cup, the cauldron. So the sort of light's obviously going to be essentially like Sting, like it will actually be a sword that glows. I might also tie it into like the Archangel Uriel has a flaming sword. I might make it similar to that, sort of bring a little bit of Christian mythology over, because you've got like Gabriel, who was the messenger to the Virgin Mary. It could be the stone, like it's the one that's able to speak to humans, like it's through Gabriel you get to, like being a messenger essentially. Uriel has the sword, and then Raphael will probably end up being the cup, and then Michael, which means who is like God, will probably end up being the spear. I'm going to tie that in. So the Cauldron of Dagda, which comes from Murias, says here, no company ever went away from it unsatisfied. It's also known as Kuansig. And I'm going to be equating this to like the Holy Grail, right? The Cup of Christ, as well as like the Fountain of Youth. So this is going to be a cup that will, like it's going to be like the source of magic essentially, and it will be therefore quite instrumental into retrieving the full scope of the Dragon King's power. And then the last but not least will be the Spear of Lu, which comes from the city of Gorius. No battle ever sustained against it. No battle was ever sustained against it or against the man who held it. This is essentially just the Irish version of Mjolnir. Once this spear was thrown, it never missed its target. So it's essentially a handheld homing missile, which is amazing. Now the spears or the staves or wands is the one that this relates to. So therefore this actually does relate to the element of fire, and it's going to be with that, and especially since no battle is sustained against them. Like it's, for lack of a better word, it's the Elder Wand. like it cannot lose a battle as long as the one holding it's like its true master sort of thing. I'm probably going to keep that part of it just because that does give it certain stakes. This one's probably going to be less based on like this, like the idea of wand lore that Harry Potter has, and more on the idea of like divine lineage. And it will probably be in about this book that I will sort of reveal that one of our protagonists, all of whom are chosen by the gods, but one of them is actually a demigod and is the rightful heir to this spear. And it will be with this spear in conjunction with the Sword of Light, having used the stone to communicate with the Dragon King and the cup to restore him to power, that they will finally defeat the King of Hell, basically, like the devil of the story, our big bad, who is using the High King as like his earthly vessel. We're gonna get into some angels versus demon style stuff. So obviously, as you go through it, like the stones are the coins, they represent earth. The spear, as I mentioned, was the wand, so it represents fire. The sword is swords, so it represents air. And then the cauldron is the cup, so it represents water. So the 4 elements are also in there. The 4 elements do also correlate to seasons in and of themselves. So fire is summer, its opposite water would therefore be winter. Autumn would be earth, because that's sort of, like the leaves are all falling. So earth makes sense. And then spring would be air, bringing with it sort of the winds of change sort of thing as we come into like, summer breezes and stuff. The interesting part of those, though, is that you can kind of associate each of them as well to a horseman of the apocalypse. And through this, as well as the archangels, that we're going to get like the most of our Christian mythology in here. Most of our Jewish mythology, our Hebrew mythology. So, for instance, one that makes the most sense, the sword will be guarded by like the red horse, the one usually called war in pop culture. The black horse will be the one guarding the cup. The pale horse, being death, will obviously be guarding the spear, which only leaves the white horse for the stone. And the cool part about that is it means that in order of how they appear in the Bible, we've got the white horse coming first with the stone, then the red horse with the sword, and the black horse with the cup, and then the pale horse with the spear. So the horses are coming in their right order, and the items they're guarding are coming in their right order, just purely based off how it comes. The white horse, so the Bible verse here is, "Come, I looked and behold a white horse." So I looked and behold a white horse, and he who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering the earth. So obviously, the earth is there. And a red horse, went out, and to him who sat on it was granted to take peace from earth, and that men would slay one another, and a great sword was given to him. So he just has a sword. I looked and behold a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard him say, like a voice in the center of the 4 living creatures, Sorry, and I heard something like a voice in the center of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, but do not damage the oil and the wine." The wine, obviously, what you would pour into a cup. And even when you look at the cup representing water, Jesus turned water into wine, and we're not spoiling that because he is guarding it. And then the pale horse is death. It's actually mentioned. "I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and he who sat on it had the name Death, and Hades was following with him." So we will actually get the god of death, or probably more likely our demon character, our big bad, following shortly after they defeat that horseman. Following just after his defeat, the main villain will make his imminent arrival as an actual earthbound, like fully formed demon on Earth. And then I also want to try and get as many different cultures involved in this as well. Like, I want it to actually feel like a world. And so we're looking at 4 being sort of a repetitive thing: 4 elements, the 4 treasures, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, the 4 archangels, 4 corners of the globe. Just kind of makes sense, and I want to give each of them a different sort of aesthetic. So if we're looking at the ancient world, we'd be looking at sort of Western Europe, which is going to be sort of, think like your generic like medieval setting. That's going to be there as one of our 4 cities. I'm going to have a more like Arabic Persian sort of, like maybe vaguely Egyptian as well, sort of. If you look at sort of the part of the world that is sort of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, sort of up through Israel to like Turkey sort of area, like that sort of like Prince of Persia, Aladdin sort of vibes. Might even include a little bit of India as well, sort of group all that together, because the architecture is all very similar for those cultures. We're going to have an East Asian inspired one, very, ninjas, samurais, dragon gates, Japan, China sort of vibe. And then the last one will be sort of a Southern and Mesoamerican sort of Aztec Inca style, which will be really cool. But for the idea behind our looking at 4, in Chinese mythology, there is something called the 4 symbols. They are also known as the 4 guardians, the 4 gods, and the 4 auspicious beasts. They are the azure dragon of the east, the vermilion bird of the south, the white tiger of the west, and the black tortoise or the black warrior of the north. And some also give a yellow serpent at the center. But having a dragon in the east fits. We can easily put that culture being the Asian one itself, because the dragons are very important to them, the Million Bird of the South will probably end up being our more Persian-inspired one. Our White Tiger of the West will likely be our Mesoamerican one, simply because of when you're looking at the world going off of, being based on Irish mythology, the Americas are to the west, which only leaves the Black Tortoise of the North to being Europe itself. And the fact that it's also called the Black Warrior does bring to mind the idea of the Black Knight from Arthurian legend as well, which is kind of cool. Now obviously Asian mythology has 5 elements instead of 4, with Earth actually being the center and air not being present due to the fact that metal and wood are there. But if we look at wood as being, actually I think they give it I think there is actually a sort of a relationship between them. Fire ends up being fire. I think wood ends up being similar to what air would be. And I think, I'm not entirely sure if metal ends up being earth and water stays the same, or if there's like this weird switch around. But yeah. So yeah. So we'll have dragon in the east, we'll have a phoenix in the south. The phoenix is sort of, especially when we take our sort of Middle Eastern, Persian, Arabic culture to being the culture that's going to have the greatest influence from Christianity and its mythology, and like the resurrection of Jesus being sort of a phoenix metaphor in and of itself. That makes a lot of sense. The white tiger would essentially just be a jaguar of some kind, being Aztec and Inca in nature, being Mayan, and then yeah, our black warrior of the north, and so don't think the cities here actually say which one's north, south, east, west sort of thing. It's only really from that. So it'd be a case of finding out whether or not, like, which elements are which, as opposed to like which way around they go. But yeah, that's sort of the main idea that I have. I am half tempted to start writing it out as a D&D game, to start working on that while we play through our first session. With me and my friends play through our first sessions, our first little storyline. But at the same time, I don't really want to have certain characters' decisions come down to the people playing them in the game, because a lot of the fun of D&D is coming up with your own characters, and if I just give them a character, it's not really that fun. But yeah, I will leave links to all of the things I talked about down below. Probably a good idea to just look up the number. I'm probably going to do this after I sign off here, but just Wikipedia in the number 4. If I just go 4 and click on Wikipedia, and then just go down to religion. Why did I just not do that? Anyway, so that'll all be in the description down below. Let me know what you think in the comments as well. if you are new here, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to hit that notification bell as well if you want to be notified when I upload new videos. If you enjoyed this one, please give it a big thumbs up. And until next time, guys, keep your head screwed on.